How's it going, guys? Dustin with Ace of Diamonds here, and my beautiful Christmas sweater. Actually, it's not ugly. Got my energy drink. The best part about this Santa is that he's gonna hold my energy drink for me. Amazing. He's got a stocking stuffer with my energy drink, so if I get thirsty as I'm working, I can sip on that. But today, what I want to talk to you guys about is wood replacement, when we want to do it, what Ace of Diamonds, what we're actually able to do for you, and kind of where that starts and where that ends. And then things that I'm looking for when I'm out on an estimate, or I'm encourage you to look for beforehand, so that we can kind of determine some of those things before we actually start digging into your house, in terms of prep, scraping, sanding, those things like that. And obviously when we're scraping, we're causing some force, we're using our tools and we're getting in there. And so depending on the condition of the wood, you may have some boards that start to just kind of fall apart on us. And if that's the case, the good news is we're actually able to replace quite a bit of that. But the thing to keep in mind is what we're looking for. So what we're looking for is, if we come on an older house, and obviously this house, it's been a while since it's been painted. I wouldn't say too long, just because I've seen the sheen on the actual paint job. So what I'm guessing is, it wasn't done that long ago, but it wasn't the best job. They probably didn't do a ton of prep. There wasn't a ton of attention to detail. Maybe the person that had it painted was kind of on a budget when they had it done. And so, and one of the reasons I'm able to tell is just because I can still see sheen on the paint. This faces the north side, but that's kind of my indicator, like, hey, it probably hasn't actually been that long. If the whole paint was faded and washed out, you wouldn't see the sheen at all. And that would be a good indicator that it would have been a much longer time since it was painted. So anyways, these boards, you can see where my hand is, this stuff is kind of chipping off here. And it's just kind of chipping along the edge there. Sorry about the video there. And if I come through with a scraper, a lot of that stuff is just gonna kind of chip off and come off. The good news about this particular section is that we're actually able to restore this with scraping, sanding. Obviously we want to put primer over any bare wood. We're going to do some caulking. I had a close-up of some nail heads there, different cracks and gaps and things like that. So that's kind of the good news about, most of this side that I'm looking at is kind of in that similar time frame where, yes, it needs prep. It can be salvaged, it can still be saved. We're not going to have to replace all the siding, but we are definitely going to want to pay some attention to this as soon as possible. We're looking at pressboard siding, which I know is basically the most common kind of thing. There's a lot of hardy board, there's a lot of different types of wood out there, but pressboard siding is pretty common. We see it the most, probably of anything, and they're even using it on newer homes. And obviously there's some better, I guess you'd call it, technology with the pressboard and the lamination. So lamination, what they have, they kind of, in terms of putting this wood together, it's kind of a manufactured wood, so it's almost like plywood. You can imagine how all the chips and chunks and everything are kind of pressed together, and then there's a layer of laminate that kind of gives it that wood grain look. So I'll kind of show you what I'm looking at with that. And so down here you can see where the wood is starting to delaminate. So that layer right here, let me see if I can get, is just kind of flaking off. It's that top layer. So really when we start to go and scrape, this isn't really going to be sanded. I mean, you're not going to get this down smooth. You're not going to get that to the point where anything's going to stick or do real well with that. We want our siding to kind of look more like this. Now, occasionally, like these bottom edges, and I'm going to show you an example up above, this could actually be repaired because the top part of it is not really starting to delaminate too bad. So you can kind of see in some of those areas where, you know, from our standpoint, like, hey, let's save you the cost there and go ahead and try and repair this wood with a scrape and sand and prep process. So this right here is not going to be too cost prohibitive. I mean, in the long run, it's going to save you money, and that's kind of the idea, is that, you know, we don't want to have to do this again anytime soon. So coming out and replacing a few boards as part of your paint job is going to be something that in the long run is just going to make for a much better overall job, longer lasting. You know, this is an area of concern, especially, you know, on this roof. You can kind of see where moisture is basically just going to be kind of coming down this. I'm sure snow is going to be sitting a lot on these areas over the winter. You know, fortunately this particular spot is on the south side, but then again, you've got sun exposure, wind exposure, all the things that you would expect on the south side. So this is really kind of a hot spot area of kind of one of those areas that we would really look for in terms of, hey, can we replace this? You know, maybe it's going to cost you a little bit more in the upfront part of the painting process, but in the long run, it's ultimately going to save you. So I'd have to say, overall, people love my sweater. I just saw some people walking by. It's funny because I'm working on the chimney, and I know what they could tell what I was doing. You know, I mean, I'm out here spreading Christmas cheer. You know what I mean? Working, you know, repairing wood. You know, all the good things that you can do on Christmas. Anyways, so now this is kind of just another different area of the house, but again, this is just kind of some good examples. So we've got a board that so we can get it in there. So obviously this board needs to be replaced. I like the idea of replacing whole boards. I just think, you know, the more seams and different things that you create, obviously that's more areas that can potentially fail and lead to problems later on down the road. So you know, in this case, replacing this whole board would probably be a good idea. And then the other thing right below it, so this board, not necessarily rotten, but it's been exposed to the elements and taking moisture on for, you know, probably quite a few years at this point. You can kind of tell. And so putting just primer, you know, trying to restore this board with as many cracks and nails and different things that are in it, usually not going to be a good idea. I mean, it just kind of, again, depends on what you're after, but in most cases you're going to want to replace this board. Again, this is kind of borderline what Ace of Diamonds can do. I would say we're able to do this, but again, it can get pretty pricey. I mean, in a lot of cases like this, it probably makes more sense to have a handyman come out and actually do the work. You know, just because they may be able to take those boards above it off, you know, depending on what's going on underneath, if there's flashing, different things like that. You know, this board can get at times complicated. I would say that on this particular house, this board really doesn't create any problems for us and should come off pretty easily. Should be able to put a new one in pretty easily as well. So, and then of course being able to caulk it and seal it and make sure that the moisture doesn't get in there again and cause it to repeat the same cycle anytime soon.